Welcome to Manifest This, Believer versus Skeptic. I'm Sharon Giroux, your resident skeptic who asks all the tough questions. And with me is Jennifer Neal, our manifesting maestro. Whether you're rolling your eyes or raising your vibration, we dive into all things manifestation, mindset, and energy from every side. Hit subscribe, settle in, and get ready for spirited debates, surprising experiments, and laughter on the journey to creating a life you love. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Manifest This. Today, we've got a really interesting episode that we're calling the Autocorrect Brain, which is basically how do you become aware of what you're not aware of? Hi, Jen. How are you today?
I'm great. So I've been thinking a lot about the brain as a computer lately. And I know we use it as a metaphor, that basically you've got a hard drive and you've got a soft drive. And usually we all nod along because something sounds accurate. But the brain processes information, it stores memory, it runs routines, it makes predictions, and that's all fine. But I don't mean it in a loose or inspirational sense. I really mean it in a very literal, mechanical way. So yesterday, I had this moment where the metaphor landed in my, really landed for me in my body rather than just in my head. And it kind of goes like this. So back in my design life about 10 years ago, there was a guy that I used to do business with, and his name was Life, but he spelled it Leif. He was from Sweden or
What a really great name. An amazing
so
handle, isn't it?
it was a great name. He was a great guy. Well, is a great guy. I have lost touch with him, but I'm pretty sure he still is a great guy. But his name was Life, and that's how it was spelled because it was from the Netherlands or something. And so I started to, because I had documentation to do with him and back and forth to do with him, I started uh, typing his name into my computer. And no matter how many times I typed it correctly, his name, Leif, the computer kept changing it back to Life. And I got so frustrated. So Leif always became Life. And I would have to go back over and over and over this autocorrect again and again. And at first it was mildly irritating, but then it became amusing because if I'm honest, it actually became unsettling. Because the computer wasn't broken and it wasn't malfunctioning and it wasn't being difficult, it was doing exactly what it had been trained to do. Spell life, Life, right? And at some point in its training data, it had learned that Life is far more common and statistically likely than Leif. Stay with me here. So when it encountered a sequence of letters that looked close enough, it didn't pause to ask what I meant. It just auto-corrected me, right?
Okay.
Right? So, the computer doesn't care. It's confident, it's efficient. And without asking permission, it just starts changing this spelling for me. And that's when it clicked for me. And it happened yesterday because now that I'm working in the life insurance industry, I have to type in life, Life, all the time. And now it autocorrects it back to Leif. And I'm like, oh my God, this is driving me nuts. So, like yesterday, it finally clicked for me that this is not just how machines behave. This is how we behave.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So imagine, something that small can feel so frustrating trying to override a system that insists that it knows better. Imagine what happens to us when we try to change something that's much more complex. Our habits, our emotional reactions, our money patterns, our relationship dynamics, the stories we tell about who we are and what's possible for us. We say we want to change these things, and yet often, they're stubbornly fixed, almost hardwired into our brain. And this is a perfect example. This is 10 years. I'm 56. Imagine what's hardwired into my hard drive.
So I want to pause you there because I guess from a scientific standpoint, none of this is really that mysterious. What you're sort of describing is habit formation and automation from a human perspective. So it's well understood in neuroscience and psychology. The brain is an energy conserving organ, right? It automates repeated behaviors through structures like our, basal ganglia. So Our conscious attention isn't required for everything we do. And that's why, we can drive the familiar route to the office and home without really thinking about it. And suddenly you sort of discover your home when you think it's a half hour drive and it's taking you 5 minutes. Or, we tie our shoes while we're having a conversation. So, from that perspective, there's no real hidden system running our life. It's our nervous system doing what it evolved to do. We're reducing our cognitive load and increasing efficiency. It sort of seems to me like if we call it a program, we're almost risking over dramatizing something really ordinary.
I actually agree with you completely. And that's precisely where this gets interesting for me.
Okay.
Because when people hear programming or conditioning, they often imagine something sinister, right? Like the mind is sabotaging them or secretly working against their best interests. But what you're describing is not malicious and it's not broken. It's not even wrong. It's obedient, right? The brain is obedient. It doesn't ask whether instruction is outdated. It doesn't evaluate whether a pattern is still useful. It simply runs what has been reinforced for so many years. And from a biological perspective, that makes perfect sense. From a lived perspective, it explains why intelligent, self-aware people often feel so stuck and keep repeating patterns they consciously dislike. So the system isn't trying to harm us, it's trying to protect us using very, very old data.
So, using your example of leaf, LEIF, versus life, LIFE, at some point 10 years ago, you must have said to your program, okay, add LEIF to my dictionary because
Yeah,
this is driving me nuts. And now, 10 years later, it's still in your dictionary, but you need LIFE.
exactly. And like the whole point of today's episode is even today, 10 years later, I'm consciously having to overdrive and recorrect that spelling. It still hasn't learned. I keep doing it all the time,
So we're
right?
So we're here now at really a core paradox.
So this leads us to a central paradox I want to explore today. If most of our behavior is automated, and if the systems running the automation operate largely outside of our conscious awareness, then how do we ever become aware of them?
That's a
Like
good
that's what I'm
question. Yeah, that's a really good
really
question.
right? So some of us, and I would say I'm one of those people, because I'm studying this daily, I'm trying to become aware of my bugaboos, right? Like I'm trying to become aware of the places I can get better, be stronger, be a better person. But if you're not that practiced at it, how do you notice the things that are shaping your choices, shaping your reactions, shaping, and therefore shaping your outcomes when those things are embedded in how you see the world,
And
right?
I would also say that sometimes if those things might be pointed out to you, even if it's done gently, you might not hear them, no matter how lovingly and gently they've been presented to you.
Totally. I'll give you an example. My boyfriend and I had a banger of a fight yesterday, and we are a lot alike. So when he fires, I fire, and he can fire and I can fire just as fast.
Mhm.
Right. And so we both came away from that for a few minutes licking our wounds. And then an hour passes, and I go back to him and I said, we've actually both started laughing because neither one of us could point the finger at the other because we both reacted in the same way. And it wasn't good.
Yeah,
But we were aware of it,
right,
both of us.
right.
So the most powerful mental patterns don't announce themselves necessarily as beliefs. They don't say, "Hi, I'm your angry reaction. Here it comes again." Or, "Hi, I'm your limiting assumption." They really feel like reality. They
Right.
feel like common sense. They feel like this is just the way things are. This is just the way I am. This is just the way I'm wired. So let me ask this slowly because it matters. How do we become aware of the things we are so unaware of that other people can often see so clearly in us, but cannot see it, but we
That's super interesting because from a research standpoint, that's really a problem. Human introspection is really unreliable. We're really good at experiencing our thoughts and our feelings and really bad at accurately explaining where they come from. I think in the text texting world, for example, that's a totally a prime example. Is you send a text or an email, you're not hearing tone, you're not understanding how the other person is saying it, and you put a whole new meaning against it. And there's, decades of evidence showing that people routinely make up reasons for their behavior after the fact. We feel something, we act on it, and then we make up the story that makes us feel more coherent or more rational. So the idea that someone can simply look inward, meditate on something, and objectively observe their own mental process is difficult and not really supported by the data. I think that's kind of where really good friends come in, but even that is a challenge.
Well, that's a really good point, Sharon, because I did a post a couple weeks ago about how Uh, one day my boyfriend said to me, "Jen, you're notorious for saving a buck." That's exactly what he said.
Right.
And I'm like, "Great." Like, I'm so glad he notices that about me, that I'm responsible, that I know how to make a buck, and I know how hard it's as easy to spend a buck. It's not so easy to save a buck. Like, I'm glad he knows that I'm fiscally responsible. And then I went, wait a minute. If I'm supposed to live from such an abundant state, what am I sending to the universe when I'm always trying to be so responsible, right?
Well,
And
uh,
he pointed it out, and
yeah.
I'm like, "Damn." Like, I don't wanna send the message to the universe that I'm scared of where the next dollar's gonna come from, and that's what can be very tricky about this whole universe stuff.
And two, from a practical perspective, you could have interpreted that message to you, as you're being cheap.
Totally.
Right? You took it one way, but somebody else might have heard that and had their own experience over their life and basically thought, oh my goodness, this person thinks I'm being cheap. Where do they think I'm being cheap? Am I cheap with them? Do I not pick up a bill once in a while? Whatever. That could have
Yeah.
caused another banger of a fight, as you phrased it.
Well, it could have, and, to be honest, I do have my cheap days, but again, like, these were really good things to become aware of, and I was open to it because I'm like, "Wow, I
Yeah.
don't wanna be like that," right?
But isn't it
So
interesting what your headspace is and
yes,
how someone else's headspace could have
yes.
interpreted it?
So that's what we're talking about today, right?
Right.
And I know we're gonna get to this, but being triggered is such a beautiful portal into a better life, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
So this is why awareness isn't about self-analysis in the way most people imagine it. It's not about sitting alone and thinking harder about yourself, although you can do that. It's not about judging your thoughts, and it's definitely not about labeling yourself as broken or unconscious. Awareness begins with inquiry, curiosity, a good old, wonder what that's all about,
Yeah.
right? So, not so much because inquiry gives you perfect answers, but more so because it just disrupts the automaticness of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So the questions slow the system down, actually they introduce a pause or a pivot, which we've talked about before. They introduce a little friction. And in that pause, however brief,
Right.
you can sometimes see the edges of the pattern that's been running the interrupted. So, for example, back to my money example, when he said that, and I went, oh, that's so nice. And I went, wait a minute, right? The wait a minute moment
Right.
I was like, maybe that has something to do with why the money is blocked here, or why the relationship is blocked here, or why I'm struggling with the career part of my life. Like, I'm just saying, if you have the guts to really go, wait a minute, and it takes vulnerability for sure, right? To
Oh,
go,
okay.
okay,
So
yeah, go
here's
ahead.
where I'm getting a little bit befuddled, let's say.
Okay.
Because what I often hear too, though, is like, do your affirmations. And so, what's the difference between asking the questions or having inquiry, like you're saying, and just rolling out the affirmations because the assumption is that I am there already?
Right. Well, listen, I know affirmations are all over the place and everybody loves a quick fix, like a pill to lose 50 pounds, but affirmations are a terrible place to start.
Okay.
Okay. And you can fake it till you make it with them. And most people do, and I did. But
Yeah.
listen, they're a terrible place to start because affirmations attempt to overwrite patterns without understanding them. So they talk at the system instead of really listening to it. Inquiry does the exact opposite. It reveals before it tries to change.
Okay. So
Okay.
basically, you don't start, you don't put on the Band-Aid until you've looked at the wound and decided, is
Yeah.
it a Band-Aid or do I need stitches?
Yeah. And not to go too healing woo woo here, what I really think is going to be valuable for people is to walk through a series of questions. So I've prepared a series of questions,
Yay.
not as tools for self improvement, but as instruments of perception.
Okay.
So you don't need to answer these to fix yourself, but you do if you want a better life, health, wealth, love, career, relationships, whatever it is. If you want a better something or you want something fixed in your life, start answering these to make some observations, to notice
Okay.
some
Not to
things.
fix
Okay?
yourself, but to notice first. So you're
Yes.
triaging your life before you roll into the solution.
Right? Like one of the easiest examples is I'm not going to go on a diet until I recognize I'm not well or I'm not in a state of body that I really want to be in.
Right.
But it's not until we're in a state of I don't like this or I want something different that we actually look to what the solutions could be.
That sort of sounds to me like you got to hit rock bottom before you're able to make your way up.
Yeah, and I mean, that's very intense. We know a lot of people, even in this spiritual world, that didn't create what they're creating today without hitting rock bottom, right? Like
Whatever that looks
Gabrielle,
like for them. Yeah.
yeah, like Gabrielle Bernstein was high as a kite on the floor of her Manhattan studio, looking up at, and then was intervened by God, right? And then her whole life changed. But anyway,
So what are the questions?
yeah. So question number 1, let's start. I think I prepared 7 questions. Yeah, I prepared 7 questions. So let's dive into these. Question number 1, what keeps repeating in my life that I claim I don't want? Okay. What keeps repeating in my life that I claim I don't want?
Okay, let me ask you a
So,
quick question before you dive into that.
yeah, totally.
You looked at me funny and you highlighted the word claim. Why?
Well, because, for example, you claim you want to lose weight, but you're not prepared to do anything about it.
Got it. Okay.
You claim you want more money, but you're actually not interested in getting off the couch.
Okay.
Right? So it goes back to that whole there is action required in getting all the things we want in our life. But yeah, so you claim you want it. Do you really want it?
Right. Okay, so
Okay.
how do we do that then? Once we ask the question, what do we
Right. So look at your life. Look at your relationships, look at your work, look at where you go to work every single day. Look at your finances, look at your health. Where do you see the same outcomes appearing in different forms? Where are you seeing similar patterns like I can't lose the weight, I can't make more money, I can't find a lover? Why? Different partner, same emotional dynamic, right?
Right.
Different job, but same dissatisfaction. Just moved jobs, I'm still unhappy. Different year, same financial stress. 50 years later, I'm still broke. Like, why?
Right. Well, I guess from a psychological perspective, repetition is rarely accidental. And this sort of goes back to where we started with our patterns, right? When outcomes recur across contexts, it usually shows us we've got an underlying belief structure or an internal model. I've always been this way, for example, guiding our perception and our behavior.
Yeah, like I was shocked recently, and I mean in the last couple of years, to learn that my personality is not hardwired into me. I can change my personality. I can change the way I show up. I can change the way I react. Or as Joe Dispenza would say, your personal reality. Your personality is just your personal reality.
Okay, and not to get delve too deeply in this, but if we look at psilocybin and the use of it right now, a lot of that is now obviously being studied in a number of different modalities, and that's been discovered that it assists in changing how our brain is wired, and we can actually work our way through certain things in our life. And it's having stunning results, for example, for people with PTSD. I mean, they've got the PTSD wired in, but a few sessions and that kind of stuff is moving away. So there is sort of scientific backing to some of this as well in other modalities.
Yeah, for sure. But even think about how hard it is if you're right-handed. Think about how hard it is to write with your left hand.
Right.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
So what we're proposing today isn't easy woo-woo work. It takes effort, and where we start is in the observation of where we are, right? The foundation.
And then
So
likely too, it also takes some practice because it's funny
for sure.
when you said right hand, left hand. I mean, I'm a right-handed pickleball player,
Yeah.
but I've always sort of played with my left hand because I was a goalie in field hockey as well. So I've always had that reactionary time. And my backhand is meh, okay. But I'm real quick on switching the paddle and playing with my left hand, which helped me when I was healing after the damage. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, even if there's a physical way of being, there are ways to change it. Okay, so what's
Mhm.
your next question then?
So question number 2 is, and this is, in line with what my boyfriend said to me, what do other people gently point out about me that I dismiss?
Okay, not always gently, but sure.
Well, and sometimes not always ever. Like I have a group of girlfriends. I don't think we ever point things about each other that are there's no tough love in that group. It's all like super over love. And I come from a family where stuff was either pointed out sarcastically and critically or never pointed out at all. So sometimes it never shows up.
Right.
But we'll get to this. So, is there feedback that I have heard from multiple people at different times that I instinctively brush aside?
Okay.
Okay. Not harsh criticism, but gentle observations, things that people say carefully, often with really good intentions.
Well, I mean, that's really kind. And it's often where blind spots come in because our mind actively filters out information that threatens a stable sense of identity. And the filtering, happens automatically and not necessarily consciously. So I think if you do have that gentle, if you're lucky enough to have that gentle friend or supervisor or colleague that can point these things out, sometimes it's better to listen with an open heart and an open mind and an open ear to get you to that next level.
Listen, it's hard. I will tell you that a couple of years ago, my daughter said to me, "Mom, if you could only be a little more gentle." And
Wow.
I was so hurt at the time because I was just so hurt and I was triggered and I thought, I'm not gentle. Like, of course, go into the defense mode, which is what we do.
Right.
And of course, we all show these not so beautiful parts of ourselves when we are triggered or when the discussion is uncomfortable or when we do feel shame or we do feel embarrassment or whatever it is. I can be as gentle as the cows come home with you,
Right.
Sharon.
Yeah.
But when I'm emotionally involved in something that's hurting me, I show up as a version of me that I'm not necessarily proud of all the time.
Mhm.
But when she pointed that out after the hurt, I was able to do something about it and dig
Wow.
into it a little bit because I
Wow.
don't want to be right. I don't want to be not gentle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway, spiritually speaking, this is why other people function as mirrors for us and they reflect angles of ourselves that we are structurally just unable to see directly. You can't see your back if you're looking into a mirror from the front,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Never see the back of your head on a haircut.
No. And, I will tell you, like, that just tells you where my growth is at because I can now publicly say my daughter called me, I said I wasn't gentle. And now I can come out and say, so I had a period of my life, and I'm sure I do from time to time too. Yesterday I told you we had a banger of a fight. I'm sure I wasn't gentle in that either. But normally it's not when we're walking through a bed of roses that these things come up.
Right.
These are the ways we react to stress and hurt and whatnot. So
And
anyway,
and
that's
I
question number 2.
imagine the hope too is that you incrementally make those adjustments and learning. It's not like you have it one way and you do a 180-degree turn and you're completely the opposite. It's an incremental adjustment in how you walk in the world based on the feedback that you're getting.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, so who are we to say how fast somebody can make a change? Like, It can be instantaneous if you want. There are, for me, what I notice now is when I get triggered, and what does that word mean? Again, it's all over the place, but when I start to literally feel my body kind of going like this, and what I'm doing, because I know you can't see me, is building, 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 boiling, 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 or just that little tickle of, that bugs me, right? Whatever that
Yeah.
is. It's the recognition of the feeling in your body that you can actually, if you can tune into that feeling, that's where the change can happen.
Okay.
And you can say to yourself, something's bugging me right now. I wonder why,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is advanced stuff. Like most of us go around pissing people off all the time.
Okay, so what's your next question?
Okay, so trigger number 3. Exactly what we were talking about. What triggers me emotionally out of proportion?
Right.
Right? Out of proportion. Where do your reactions feel bigger than the moment itself? Where does your body respond as though something serious is happening, even when the situation is objectively minor?
Okay, so again, this aligns sort of what we know about emotional memory. Our amygdala is responding based on associations or reactions and stuff from the past, sometimes even before we've had time to evaluate our present context. I mean, I remember as we talk about this, I was just remembering that I was working in a group project for my MBA and, you know, group of professional people, and I had a ridiculous response to something and I felt it in my body. And I looked around at shocked faces. I walked away. I turned to a good friend who was there and said, I was off base and out of line there, wasn't I? And they gave me honest feedback, which allowed me to, why did I do it? There was a lot of stuff going on in my life that particular time.
Yeah.
Nobody else needed to know what it was, but it had
Yeah.
me pause, go back, apologize, and
Yeah.
readjust. And I think
Yeah.
the big part about all of this is you'd be surprised how gracious people are. Because as
Yeah.
much as I felt shame around that moment of what I did,
Yeah.
being reflected, having it reflected to me what I did, and then being able to go back and go, my bad, I'm sorry. The level of graciousness that then appeared for me was surprising and quite tender.
It's interesting you say that because I don't think everybody can be like that though. Gracious, give you grace, give you grace, give you elegance, give you mercy when you do apologize. I was watching Sweet Home Alabama last night
What a
with
great
Reese
movie with
Witherspoon.
Reese Witherspoon.
I had never seen it before, right? I'd never seen it before. Anyway, it came out on Netflix last night, so we watched it. And there's a scene in the movie where Reese Witherspoon goes back to her hometown in Alabama
Yep.
and she gets pissed drunk and she goes to the local bar. And because she's so angry with her life or something, I can't remember, she starts firing at all of her old friends about what losers they are and how their life hasn't amounted to anything because she's this big city slicker from Manhattan. And she gets so drunk and she hurts people. She outs someone that's gay. She outs one of her best friends that turns out she knows he's gay and she outs him in front of everybody. And she just does a lot of damage. But the next day or a couple days later, one of the women that she hurts, she goes up to her and she said, I'm really sorry. She doesn't make any excuses. She doesn't come up with a laundry list of reasons why she did it. She just says to her friend, I'm really sorry. And her friend says to her, it's okay. Right? Like she gives her the grace, but I don't think we always get that grace. I think there's a lot of grudges held and bitterness and resentment. So anyway, just on that point, I think you're right. I
Yeah.
think it's,
Yeah.
may we all remember, we are all broken and messy. We all make mistakes. And it's nice when we give people grace. And it's nice if people can give us grace, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so
Okay.
what do you think the next question we should be asking ourselves is?
So, question number 4. What feels familiar but doesn't actually feel good? This one's hard, right?
Okay.
This is hard because you actually, again, you don't know. But what in your life feels normal, but also heavy, constricting, or draining? A really good one for me is, when you're so used to eating certain kinds of food, but you come away from the table and you feel disgusted, or you feel heavy, or you've got indigestion. Like that physical weight, that physical heaviness, that physical feeling of discomfort, I think is a good one
Right.
to tune into.
Well, I think as human beings, we like a lot of predictability. And sometimes that predictability is a challenge because it's the same thing every day. And then we wonder why it's boring or frustrating or annoying, as opposed to enjoying sort of the little things. So discomfort
Yeah.
is really safe as well.
It's totally safe. I was chatting with a girlfriend the other day, and she was telling me that her daughter is her adult daughter, right? 25 years old, but her daughter is going to be out of the house for the month of February. Then she said, "I wish I had a lover."
Good for her.
Right? In other words, she's got the house to herself finally after 25 years of being a mother.
Yeah.
And she's like, "I wish I had a lover." What feels familiar but doesn't actually feel good, right? She has gotten used to life without a lover, but the minute her kids are out of the house, she's wishing and wanting she had a lover.
Right.
So there's a sense of heaviness there or of longing there. So that's a perfect example of what we call normal.
Uh-huh.
I'm single and I'm happy, but it's really what we have conditioned. I'd really like a lover. This is uncomfortable for me. I'd love to have something different.
Right. Okay. So what's the next question we need to think about?
Question number 5. What do I constantly explain, justify, or defend?
Oof, that's a big one.
Yeah, it's hard too. So, where do you always have a story ready, a reason, a rationalization?
So that's really maintaining that identity that we like to keep around ourselves. We like to protect our minds in this self concept against anything that might destabilize it. Because again, it's moving outside of the framework of who we perceive ourselves to be.
Exactly. I'll give you an example of this one too. So there is a person in my life that does some work for me and the communication isn't great. The deadlines aren't met. There's a series of things that are a real letdown from my perspective. And whenever we talk, there's a laundry list of excuses about all the things in their life that is affecting why there's no communication, why the deadlines aren't met, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a perfect example of justifying away, explaining away, or defending why we're not showing up the way maybe they want to show up and certainly what my expectation is as a
Right.
client, right? So that's a really good example. The system is protecting itself. So I have to give grace, of
Right.
course. This isn't a straight business relationship, but I have to give grace because their system is protecting them by the explanations, by the story that they keep telling themselves and telling me.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what's the next question you suggest we ask ourselves?
Okay, number 6, where am I living on emotional autopilot? Again, this is hard because you don't know you're on emotional autopilot. So friends can really help you. It takes a really big, bold person to say, "Tell me, darling, where am I reacting instead of making a better choice? Or where am I drifting instead of deciding?"
Right.
Like yesterday, again, my boyfriend said to me, "That was a lovely soliloquy you just gave me. What are you trying to say to me?" And I was like, wow, like it had a point, but I guess I didn't bring it home for him, right? So again, we have this relationship where we can be very honest with each other. And even I'm not telling you it doesn't hurt,
Yeah.
right? I'm not telling you it doesn't hurt. I'm not saying it doesn't sting. I'm not saying that it's going to be a bed of roses. But if you want to be a better person, on this short life we have on this planet,
Hmm.
we can ask these questions.
I think, as human beings, we're governed by a lot of just automatic reactions. And it's not surprising, right? Because we don't consciously think about breathing. We don't consciously think about listening or growing cells or what have you. It's all so much of who we are as human beings is automatic. It's no surprise that our emotional system, our mental system isn't conscious intention either, that sometimes
Right.
just automated.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
And that's where the code hides, right? It hides. The code is hidden.
right. Okay.
Listen, even with a computer, we need a programmer to write new programs.
Yeah.
We need a programmer to write new programs in our head. Problem is, we're the programmer. So we
Well,
have to learn we have to do this.
yeah, and try not to give ourselves a virus in the meantime. Okay,
Totally.
so
You
let's
don't
look
want
at
that.
the next question. What should we ask now?
Okay, this is the final question. So, I mean, there's 1,000 questions you can ask yourself, but I think these 7 get us moving into, do I really want to go down this road? Because it's not fun
Right.
all the time. But again, if you say you want a different life, if you say you want to start seeing different outcomes, if you say you want different experiences, if you say that you want a different reality, you got to start asking these questions.
Mhm.
Okay. Question number 7. What scares me about becoming the version of me that I say I want?
Wow. Okay, that's a big one because, we talk a lot about the way we think, but even our body interprets unfamiliar states as potential threats. So that sounds like it's a question that's not just the emotional fear or the mental thinking about it, but maybe even something that affects us in the body as well. It's the whole package.
Yeah. So, like a really good example, again, I'll use me as the example. As you know, because of this podcast, I have a deep desire to share with the world what I have learned over the past 20 years about how you can change your life.
Right.
And to the point where now I'm taking it further, broader to more distant lands. And one of those distant lands was through Facebook. And Facebook I've got a lot of, I've got a lot of friends there, but I've got a lot of friends there, right? I've got friends from my past, from my primary past, from my high school past, from my university past, from my sailing and my skiing past. And they're people that necessarily might not be so kind or might look at what I'm putting out there and think, God, what is she doing? Like,
Right.
I I'm so embarrassed for her. Sometimes I think that. I think that people are probably saying, God, I'm so embarrassed for her that she's putting herself out there like that. What scares me about becoming the version of me that I say I want? I ask myself that question all the time. What scares you about this, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Why is this so hard? What do you care? Why do you care? And then I have to explore that a little bit, right?
Mhm. Well, it's for me, it's sort of like when I've gotta do something that scares the heck out of me, I always ask myself, "What's the worst that can happen?" And I sort of then work back from that and think, "Okay, well, if that's the worst that can happen, how would I deal with it so that
Yeah.
it'll help me be braver?" But it also helps me build some resilience against potential disruptions or what I feel might be threats or
Yeah.
concerns.
Yeah. Yeah. So, even desire can feel dangerous
Yeah.
because it disrupts identity. And that's what we're talking about is identity work. In fact, as you and I both know, we were going to do a whole podcast on how to create a new identity. But I thought the precursor to that has to be before we create something new, we have to figure out what we are.
Right. Makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, like, to kind of sum this up, I know we ran a bit long today, but the reason we can't see what we're unaware of is very simple. We don't realize we're looking through it,
Right.
right?
Right. It's sort of like people aren't necessarily seeing the reality of things. They're seeing internal filters. It's like looking at the world with sunglasses on. You think everything's that gorgeous blue color because that's the color of your lenses. And you take off those lenses and everything looks just a little bit different.
Exactly. And we're all wearing a different set of lenses. So we're all coming at it from a different perspective. Every single one of us has a different set of circumstances that led us to what we're seeing through today.
Right. But I mean,
So
all of what we're getting to though is what's the potential for adjustment and change?
if you want change and adjustment,
Right. Sure.
so, if you're sitting around unhealthy, not happy, single, and broke, but you are okay with that, then have at her.
Right. Right.
But if you desire a different health profile, if you desire more money, if you want a better or different job, if you would like to share your life with a special someone, maybe these questions are worth going through.
Even without the specifics, if you want to be bolder in the world, if you want to be in the world in a way that has you appreciating everything every day, maybe it's some of these questions getting answered to just find again that incremental thing that will make that adjustment for you.
Totally.
Right.
And baby steps, right?
Yeah.
Baby steps. But if you really do want to see some change, especially this year in 2026, maybe start with these 7 questions and then we can start building something that we want better.
That's fantastic. Okay, Jen, well, thank you very much for the chat today. It's always good. And listen to us next week for the next one. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to Manifest This, Believer versus Skeptic. If you enjoyed today's conversation, share it with a friend, believer or skeptic. And don't forget to leave us a review so others can join in the debate. Plus, check out Jennifer's TikTok account, Manifestation RX, where she writes daily prescriptions for manifesting your dreams. Think practical tips with a dash of magic. We love hearing your questions and stories, so tell us what you're manifesting or questioning this week. Until next time, keep an open mind and maybe manifest a little magic.